Hey, good morning and welcome to Breakthrough Walls. I'm Ken Walls and I'm your host. And today I have this. I don't even know where to start with this woman. She is absolutely amazing. Her name is Sharla Frost. She has had an unbelievable career as an attorney. She now has a career as an author. She's written this is the book she's launching today is the fourth book in its series Frogville, but she also wrote a book Power at the Table for Attorneys. She's an amazing lady. You're about to find out how amazing she actually is. So do me a favor, stop everything that you're doing and share this out with everybody you know, and stay tuned because you're going to hear from Sharla Frost and be blown away by her, just like I am. So hang tight. We'll be right back. We are back. Let me bring the inimitable Sharla Frost on the show. Sharla, welcome.
Good morning, Ken.
Good morning.
That
I
introduction
am
made me blush.
what?
That introduction made me blush.
Well, you know what? You are one of those people in this world who I admire the heck out of you and everything you've accomplished professionally. But just who you are as a person. You're a great human being. And I just love that about you.
Thank you.
So blush some more.
Yeah.
And everybody watching, please share this out with your network because you're going to be blown away by Charla. So today is International Frog Day. So happy International Frog Day to everyone watching. And it's also the day that we are launching Charla's newest book, Frogville,
Quest
Quest
for
for a Sword. Yes. I always want to say a quest, but it's not. It's Quest for a Sword. It's the fourth book in the Frogville series Charla has written. And I'm excited to talk about that. But for the people watching, Charla, that don't know who you are or your background, why don't you start with telling everybody where you were born and raised?
Okay. Well, I was born in Paris, Texas. I like to tell people, je suis né à Paris. That's about all the French I speak, by the way. And I grew up in Frogville, Oklahoma, which is 25 miles north of Paris. I'm a fourth generation Frogvillian on one side of the family and a fifth generation on the other. So we've been here a really, really long time. I went to 12 years of public school at Fort Towson public schools and had a great time, got a great education. Based on that, I got to go to college on a full academic scholarship at Southeastern.
Wow.
And so 4 years at Southeastern Oklahoma University got me 3 years of academic scholarship to Baylor Law School. And
Wow.
Baylor was an amazing experience. I was a little surprised when I got there and discovered it was a Baptist university, but who knew? Uh, but I went from I thought I wanted to be a trial lawyer, and Baylor really specializes in preparing people to go into the courtroom. So I went from law school to what was then Fulbright and Jaworski, one of the largest law firms in the country at the time, and one of the three premier firms in Houston. And that was fabulous. And I didn't realize there were 1,000 people who worked there, and there weren't 1,000 people in the county I came from. So that was a
Wow.
relatively short stint before I went to a small boutique litigation firm. And from there until I retired in 2020, I tried cases. I actually got to do that thing that most people say they want to do when they go to law school. I got to go in front of juries and explain my client's position and had a great time. It was a wonderful career, but I decided I didn't need to spend more nights in hotels. And after 300 nights on the road for years and years, I decided to stop doing that and do what I wanted to do, which was speak and write books.
I think we should unpack that a little bit. First off, not many people get to retire at 37 years old, so congratulations for that. Um, Second, what's that?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Second, like, okay, so I literally just had this conversation with somebody this morning about like, go do that's in the middle of a shift in careers. I'm like, dude, you're never going to be really fully satisfied and free until you're doing what doesn't feel like work, like it's just something you love to do. And I don't, I know there's people out there that don't subscribe to that. I personally think that um you can make all the money in the world, but you aren't taking any of it with you. So while you're here, make a difference in the lives of others and yourself. Like, what do you want to do that makes you happy? And you did that. I think that's amazing.
Well, I had always wanted to write. I was an English and speech double major in college because I can't add and subtract to save my life. That's something that's never changed. Math was just not my thing.
Yeah.
But I was the editor of the school newspaper in college. I had always hankered to write. So I was really done with trial work. I I defended companies in what's called mass tort litigation. So I defended companies accused of personal injury from asbestos and silica and benzene, anything you could hurt people with, potentially be accused of hurting a lot of people with. I defended those kinds of cases. And
Wow.
you can win dozens and lose the next one, and it wipes out all of your wins. And I didn't want to be a judge. I'd never had any hankering to do that. And
Right.
I'll tell you later. Remind me of that. I have a funny story about that. But I was just ready. I had done all the things I was likely to do. I had run my own law firm. I had managed other people's law firms. I had traveled. I had done seminars. I had trained people. I'd done all the things you can do as a lawyer unless you want to move into something next.
Yeah.
And I was just done. I just woke up after 8 weeks in the hotel in Connecticut because I couldn't get home because of the way the flight schedules hit. I thought, I don't have children. I don't have anybody to put through college. My house is mostly paid off. The ranch is paid off. My parents are getting older. If not now, when? So I also had an epiphany. It's always helpful to read the partnership agreement. I didn't really do that with
Yeah.
the law firm, but they're sort of like your credit card agreement. They're boilerplate. So if you're going to sign on, you're just going to sign on. So I'm at the partners meeting. It would have been a year and a half before I gave notice to retire. And they were having this intense argument about the placement of the comma in a section that related to a group that I wasn't in. So I was reading the partnership agreement, and it turned out that at my firm at the time, there was a provision that when you reached your 58th birthday, you could give them 30 days notice, do a regular retirement, and they would return your capital account. That's the investment you make in order
Yeah.
to partner. And they
Right.
have to do that in 30 days. And it's like, I'm going to be 58. So I spent a year getting everything in order,
Wow.
transitioning cases, making sure that I was finished with things. And when the
Yeah.
time came, I submitted my little note and said, "It's been lovely, but I'm going to the ranch." And that's what I did. And the timing, as it turned out, worked out perfectly by
Yeah.
accident because I gave notice that I was going to retire as a effective April 30th because there were some internal deadlines that you had to meet. And COVID shut down the entire world in
Yeah.
like late February. So couldn't have been better. Yeah.
Dan
Timing,
Altmaier says, "That is an interesting comma."
it was a great comma. Yeah. It precipitated a close read of a provision that I had no idea was in there. Clearly written
Wow.
for someone specific, and
Yeah.
but it applied to yours truly. So,
That's awesome.
reading the agreement is really a good thing. That's my current recommendation for everyone. Make sure you read the partnership agreement.
How many years after you signed it did you read it?
Right at 5. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
I think, it's always like, you sign up for anything and there's like pages of fine print. And I'm like, everybody just clicks OK and sign. I mean, no, I don't think most people read all that stuff. I don't.
No,
I know it.
no one reads it unless you have a reason to read it, like you're
Yeah.
bored out of your mind in a meeting.
Yeah,
No one reads that stuff.
like
It's
you were. You're like, I
yeah.
can't even do this. So you retired in 2020 and you decided that you were going to write a book. Your first book is Power at the Table. I hear
Yes.
music playing.
Yeah, sorry about that. That's the driveway alarm at the ranch.
Oh,
I
nice.
think, but
Somebody
yeah,
just pulled in.
yeah, Gwen, my sister, gave it to Skip, my boyfriend, for Christmas, so
Oh my
they both
god,
love it. I hate it, but it's okay.
that is so funny. So you decided to write your first book, which is a
That's
book for attorneys.
right. That's
Power at
Power
the
at the Table. Yeah.
Yeah, Power at
And
the Table.
that's a marketing book. One of the things that I was effective at and just fortunate, I kind of lucked into it. I was very good at business development, which was one of the reasons that I was successful in my career. I tell people lawyers don't have pensions because they really don't. If you're not going to eat cat food when you're old, you have to make sure that you generate business and you keep some of the money. But there are very few books or training materials on how to do business development. Lawyers are expected to do it, but we're not trained to do it. And women in particular are not trained to do it. Societally, that's just, yeah, apparently you guys learned that in gym class because
Yeah.
we missed all of that.
Yeah.
So I had done a lot of training over probably the decade and a half before I retired on marketing and business development, really for lawyers generally, but with a special emphasis on women.
Yeah.
So I decided I would write the book that I wished I'd had when I was trying to figure out how to do that stuff.
Mm,
And I thought it was going to be easy because I had all this stuff. I had written all these emails and blogs and articles for years. And I was
yeah.
just going to take that stuff and go, boom, and it'll turn into a book. And
Right.
it was a little bit more complicated than that. But it was
It's
it was a good
yeah.
process.
Yeah. Yeah. So you have that first book, and then as expected from most lawyers, you went from that book directly into writing children's books.
Yeah. Yes, it was a logical transition.
It
Uh,
just seems like natural progression, like
Yeah, the publisher I was working with at the time, after we did the first book, sat down with me and said, "What did you think about the process?" And I said, "Well, I really enjoyed it. I thought it was interesting." And he said,
yeah.
"Well, do you plan to write another book?" And I said, "Well, I might do a revision of Power at the Table because it's women focused and the advice is really neither gender specific or profession specific. So I could make that more generic. And he said, well, that's great. Have you ever thought about writing a children's book? And I said, well, no, don't have kids. Really didn't think about that. And he said, during COVID, it's really the only thing that's selling. So why don't you give
Mm,
some thought to it? And I thought, I don't have anything else to do. I'm retired. So,
right.
okay. So that was the genesis of the first book.
Wow. And you came up with the name Frogville.
Yes, I based that
Y
on my hometown because
Yeah.
it's a logical use. When I was in college, I applied for a scholarship that, by the way, I didn't get. But as part of that process, I got to meet Carl Albert, who is the former Speaker of the House of Representatives. And
Wow.
Mr. Albert, who was about this tall, he was a little tiny thing, um, asked me where I was from. And I said, well, I'm from a small place in Oklahoma. And he said, no, 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 no. I'm from Bug Tussle. Everybody knows I'm from Bug Tussle, Oklahoma, because that's what they'll remember. Where are you from? And I said, I'm from Frogville. And he said, tell everyone you ever meet you are from Frogville, Oklahoma, because they will not remember your name, but they will remember they met a woman from Frogville. Some of the
Wow.
best advice I ever got. So when it came
Brilliant.
time to write a children's book, what are you going to use? Frogville.
I love it. And talk about so Frogville is now a 4-book series, about to be a 5-book series. We're working on the 5th one right now. I'm your new publisher. Thank you for your business. We love you, and you know that. But so talk about the progression of each book. The new one that's launched today is Frogville. It's the 4th book, Frogville Quest for a Sword. But start with the first one, then talk about that and a little bit of the storyline and the second and third and up to where we are now.
Yeah. Well, as sort of the executive summary, these are traditional fairy tales with a female protagonist. Because just like there weren't any marketing books for women lawyers, there
Yeah.
really aren't a lot of fairy tales where the female is the central character. So in these books, my protagonist is a young woman named Lily Pad Lotus Dillweed. Say that 3 times without.
Yeah.
Um, and Lily lives in Frogville, which has been cursed by a wizard because the residents were mean to outsiders. And when boys turn 13, they turn into a frog and have to go on a quest to get a royal kiss to release them from the curse. So they will no longer be a frog. Well, that's all very well and good until Lily and her twin brother Crocus turn 13. And when they turn 13, suddenly Lily's the one who turns into a frog because you
Mm,
see, she's a minute older than Crocus. So she's the first girl that's ever turned into a frog, but she has to go on a quest so she can get released. And the stories are about Lily and her development over time. In the
mm,
first one, she goes on the quest. She, in fact, gets a kiss, but it's not a royal kiss and it's not a romantic kiss. So, one of the teaching points of the book is that love doesn't have to be romantic, friendship is also important. But because of what happens at the end, and for those of you who haven't read them, I'm not going to ruin the end, but
right.
she makes a promise that she will go on a second quest and get magic water to release her best friend from a new curse. So that's the second book. And in the second book, the first book is a very traditional fairy tale. Second book is inspired by the Arabian Nights. So we have an Arabian princess who must go on a quest to restore a magic sword and save her father and his kingdom
Mhm.
because they've been captured by an evil jinn. Nasty genies. Uh, and Amira, who is the princess, encounters Lily on the way, and they team up to go on a joint quest because they both need to go to the same place. They need to get to the fountain. And the point of that is to teach teamwork and the importance of uh, friendship and joint venture and so on. And in that one, Crocus shows back up. That's the twin brother,
Mm.
and he is experiencing great sibling envy because he didn't get to go on a quest after all that. So it talks about it. It is a teaching point on how people can change and how people can change back. But then the third book, the girls,
Yeah.
Lily and Amira, are in what is inspired by Irish fairy tales. They're in the kingdom of Fae to help
Mm.
Shaylee the queen, who has she's young, and the evil advisors are trying to take over her kingdom, and she needs help, and she is in the process of growing into her powers because since you aren't a 13-year-old girl, you don't know this, but you have a 13-year-old daughter. So two
Yes.
you've been through 13 twice.
Yes,
So
I have.
you know how difficult a time period that is for girls. So another of the teaching points is that you will grow through a lot of this stuff. So
Yep.
so that's number 3. So on number 4, which is the one that's launching
Today.
today
Yes.
is inspired by Norse mythology and the Wizard of Oz. And Cassie, Lily's best friend, and Lily are on their way home to Frogville, except they get lost.
Mm.
And they get rescued by a family of Valkyries. But in order to win the instructions on how to get home to Frogville, they have to go to the Silver City and retrieve a stolen sword that's important to the Valkyrie mother. So it it is another experience for Lily to learn how life can be good but turn out differently than you thought it was going to. So,
Mm.
it's been fun. And number 5, which is the one that, you and I are working on illustrations for, is
Yep.
inspired by Beowulf, and it's a buddy story, and it has a dragon. The first one has a dragon, the 5th one has a dragon, all appropriate for the Year of the Dragon.
So incredibly cool. So and Zena's on here, Charlotte's.
Hi, Zena.
Charlotte, you really are an amazing storyteller, and I have to point something out. Number 1, I think a frog just escaped from that door behind you because it opened it.
That's because my cat,
Oh,
who is able to open the door, I locked the little beast out, and Kirby is able to open the doors, and he has
oh
opened
my
the cat.
gosh.
Yeah.
Wow. That's a smart cat. So but the other thing is, okay, so we went from talking about lawyering to and you were passionate about that, but I'm going to point something out, and you go back and watch this later and you'll see what I'm talking about. When we got into the Frogville series, you lit up like a Christmas tree.
Oh,
You really you started talking because I don't know, there's something special about it, very special about it. So and everybody watching needs to go to Amazon and get a copy of your book. We're putting it on your website. I don't see it on the Frogville 4 page, but we're working on that.
okay.
It'll be up there momentarily. But so the book Frogville, Quest for a Sword, is there's so many Frogvilles now that my mind keeps wanting to go back to Queen. And but Quest for a Sword is launching today. Everybody, please go to Amazon. All you have to do is type in Charla's name and you'll see all of her books. But grab a copy of the Kindle version or the hardback version of the book. And this is amazing. So the fifth book is coming out soon, and we won't announce the date yet, but it's soon. But the fourth book is quite the interesting story. You also are doing, like, you've been to some, what, second grade classes?
Yeah, I've
You-
spoken to a couple of second grade classes and went I actually spoke with a group of middle school students at Hugo, Oklahoma recently. They are in a life skills class, and
Wow.
we read some of the book and talked about the book. We talked a little bit about Power at the Table book. The kids were much more interested in the Frogville books.
So incredible. And I think that you're open to speaking at these at any school, aren't you?
I am. I think that is very, very important. Uh, One of the things that was, I think, crucial to my development as a kid was I was a big reader, and I came from a family of readers. I mean, my both parents read a lot. All my grandparents read, but I loved to read, and
Yeah.
that background gave me a basis that some of my other contemporaries didn't have, not because they didn't have the skill or the intellect, they just didn't have sort of that same background.
Right.
Um, and then I turned that love of reading into being an English major, which made me unemployable. But a friend of mine told me I was very charming at cocktail parties.
Well, I think that and I keep Abigail doesn't like to read.
A lot of kids don't. It's interesting to me. I see that a lot of youngsters don't. And I've looked at some of the neurological studies, and they believe that the difference relates in part to all of the time online because our brains become accustomed to those little short snippets. So it
Yep.
makes it much more difficult for students to then pay close attention to longer text. And
Yeah.
I've had very good response to the Frogville books
Yeah.
from students who are really older than they're targeted at, because the target range is really sort of 7 to 13, because I
Yeah.
thought that that's probably the right age range.
Yeah.
Some of the more enthusiastic readers have been a little bit older than that. I think it may be in part because the stories resonate a little bit with some of the television and movie series. Um, they're not as complicated, and they're upbeat. So I try. I don't like to kill people in my stories.
Yeah.
I'll save that for some adult books I'm going to write
Right.
later.
Right.
But for the children's stories, to get them interested in the ongoing nature of the story and sort of the mystical parts of it.
Yeah.
It was funny, the second graders I talked to at Hugo recently, the teacher was asking them if these were fiction books or nonfiction books. And I will footnote and say, I don't think I knew the difference between those two until I was
Right.
in junior high. So I'm really impressed with what these teachers are doing with these young students. But I had to laugh. One of the little girls raised her hand and she said, it's gotta be fiction. People don't turn into frogs. Yeah,
Right.
yeah, but
That's
getting
brilliant.
kids to read is a struggle, and apparently getting college kids to read is a struggle. Because I read several, pop culture sort of articles on that in the last couple of months. So I may be publishing into a dying art, but nonetheless, I'm gonna keep at it.
Well, I think though, the pain is the predecessor of all wisdom. And I do believe that eventually people will figure it out, and they'll have to go back to reading. And I you know, I I I've personally seen it with myself, and I'm disciplined enough to say, just turn off the phone and read. No distractions. Turn off the computer, the phone, no distractions. Pick up the book and start reading, and spending that time every day of my life reading, because I know that readers are leaders. And I also know that, like, your books are fiction, but they're almost parable in nature, and really teach a lesson. And there's an overarching lesson in each book to help kids um, learn through story.
The goal, whether I have succeeded or not, is to write something that is both enjoyable
Yeah.
but teaches a lesson. We no longer have morality plays. So back in medieval times, there was good and there was evil and there was an outcome. So that's how all the plays worked.
Yeah.
Things are a little more nuanced now, and I don't
Yeah.
think mine are quite that fundamental. On the other hand, we need what I call common cultural currency, CCC. We need things in common. And we have a lot in common in this world, but particularly in these challenging times, sometimes it's a little hard to see that.
Yeah.
But in terms of educating and civilizing our next generation, it's important to remind people friendship's important. Keeping your promises is important.
Yes.
Not being mean to strangers is really important. Don't always get cursed and your water turned dark, but if you don't do things right, your water gets sort of nasty and turns dark. So there
Yeah.
may be a slight environmental lesson there.
Yeah.
On the other hand, the really important points are that it's important for people to learn the value of friendship and how to do teamwork, even if you're very different people, because these characters come from different settings and they have to learn to work together for a common goal.
People turn into frogs is learning about metaphors and parables. Dan Altmeyer life is about seeing beyond the surface. And I think that um, here's what I find probably more curious than anything, because I know you very, very well, and you happen to be one of the most, and I'm not just saying this is how I truly feel, and most people that get to know you feel this way about you. You're so smart. Like, you are, and the way that you write. So anybody not following Sharla on social media needs to stop that behavior right now and follow her, because she puts out this thing called a missive, where she writes, and I didn't, until she said it, I had never even heard, I didn't even know what a missive was. So I had to Google it. What's a missive? But she writes um, these stories about her life and things going on, and things going on in the world, and she puts them out once a week. And well, typically once a week, that you've missed here and there, but um and they're so well written that it's mind blowing to me. Seriously, I every time I read one of your I'm like, I need to write like that. But so I think about your experience as a litigator, or in the practice of law, and I think about all of the wisdom that you have there, and what you could take and share with the world, in more than just the legal realm, other business realms too. And you chose to write children's books, and I think that's amazing. I truly do. My question, or my curiosity, is about why. Why didn't you just keep writing books that would impact business owners instead of children? I'm just curious. I'm not saying that it's wrong or right. I'm like, that's really interesting that you chose that.
Well, I think there are a couple of things. One, um, there are a zillion business books. You know, I
Yes.
ran a business, I operated a business. I one of my books will probably be on business resiliency because all of the cascade of things that can go wrong did go wrong, and we read through it anyway,
Yeah.
lived through it anyway. But if you're going to make a difference in the world, I think you make a difference at the beginning. And the
Mm,
beginning is with those children who are reading. And my missives that you reference are sort
yes.
of my weekly editorials. I loved writing editorials in college, even the one that got me threatened once by a football player. Another great story for another time. But a friend of mine about probably about 5 years ago said, you're never going to have time to interact with all the people that you know. I don't know nearly as many people as you know, Ken, but I know a lot of people. I like people, so I like interacting with people. And
Yes.
he was right. I did not have the time, but I did have the interest. I like to keep up with my buds. And I
Mm,
love when I hear back from people on my missives. Uh, Sometimes I
yeah.
do, sometimes I don't, but a lot of people will respond to me. And so I love that social interaction. And that's my way of staying in contact with the world on an ongoing basis. And in this world where social media is so pervasive,
Yep.
people at the same time are so isolated. I think
Yep.
that's important. But as to why would I write a children's book versus a business book? Children's books are fun.
Right.
Business books are important, but children's books are fun. So this has been a fun project.
Yeah. I get that, and I love that. And the other thing is you spent all those years working and doing the I mean, traveling 8 weeks at a time is a nightmare. Like, that's terrible. And
That was my
so
life. Yeah.
yeah, but you don't have to do that anymore. This is your fun phase. This is when
Mhm.
you get to do what you want to do. And I
That is
love that. So everybody, I want everybody watching to know it's up. charlafrost.com/frogville dash 4 is the link. You go there and you can click on, there's a button to order the Kindle, there's a button to order the hardback version. Eventually we'll get the softbound up there. It's not there right now because of, I think God just doesn't want it there for some reason. I don't know. But we're working on that. But the hard you want the hardbound version of this anyway. So go over to charlafrost.com/frogville dash or hyphen 4. And if you just go to charlafrost.com, it's linked at the top. And but Sharla, you are again one of my favorite people. You are wise way beyond your years, way beyond your years. And I know some of the other projects coming, and I'm just like, what? Like, she's like, I'm not going to disclose it, but you have these other books that you want to do, and I'm like, oh my gosh, like, where do you even come up with? And they're brilliant ideas. They're just, and I'm like, so I listen, I want everybody watching. I want to make sure that everybody is following you, send you a friend request, following you on social media, like, and please share this out. If you can't see this woman's heart and who she is, then you probably need to go see your eye doctor because she's amazing. Charlotte, what else would you like to share? I have a question, and I want to ask you to share more if there's more. But a question I have is, I'm always curious on, this is Breakthrough Walls, so it's about having a breakthrough. What do you think stops people from, and especially after the conversation I had this morning, what do you think stops people from just going, you know what? I'm just going to live my life to do me, be me, be happy, do what I want to do instead of what everybody thinks I should be doing. What do you think holds people back from doing what you're doing now?
Well, I think people are afraid. They're afraid that it won't be successful. And then
Mm,
what'll they do? You know,
right,
you've given up your job. And then what? Well, for them, I would give them the advice that I got when I started my first law firm. I sat down and visited with a friend of my dad's, and he was close to 80 at the time. He was the only lawyer I knew locally and the only person I could talk to because I needed advice and I couldn't go to the people I was working with. So I told him that I was considering going into business with a friend of mine and we were going to open our own firm, but I didn't know what I would do. What if it failed? And he gave me some of the best advice. Vester Songer, God rest his soul, he was a lovely guy. But he looked at me and he said, "If it doesn't work, you'll get another job. You're young.
right,
It's not that much money." And
right,
it was to me at the time because it was all the money I had. On the
right,
other hand, he was right. If it didn't work out, I'd get another job. I was looking for a job when I got that last one. So,
right.
it's what you do. And I know that post-COVID and all the pandemic and all that baloney, things are have changed somewhat, but at the heart of it, you either take that risk. I call it closing your eyes and jumping, because you either close your eyes and jump or you don't. And if you're going to be miserable, you might as well be miserable doing something you think you'd like to do, as opposed to being miserable doing what you know you don't want to do, because
Oh
you
my
might get
gosh.
lucky and the next thing might work out really well. But I think that it's fear of failure, and
Yeah,
it, you just never know. It may work out, it may not work out. I've done a lot of things in my life that didn't work out, and I
yeah,
just moved on to whatever was next.
yes,
And I think that if people would do that more frequently, they would feel less confined. But you also have to be realistic. You have to go do things that you have the ability to do. And that's one of the things I actually talk about in the first book. That's one of the reasons I say it's neither gender nor profession specific, because one of the first things I suggest people to do, and there are worksheets, so you have to fill them out. But I suggest that you figure out what you're good at and what you want to do and how those two things intersect. And
yeah,
if they don't intersect, then you've got to figure out if you can learn how to do what you want to do, or if you need to adjust what you think you want to do.
yeah,
But you need to be very honest with yourself about your skill set. And my skill set is that I can write and I can speak and I
yeah,
work hard.
yeah.
And
You do.
with if you combine those things, if need be, I'll pick up beer cans on the beach. I'll do something,
Right.
but it was time for me to do something different. And I think that there are a lot of people who've reached that point when it is time to do something different, but they don't really know what it is. And if they know what it is, they're just afraid to pull that trigger. But you might as well pull the trigger.
I think in you I imagine you would agree, but I truly believe that people, I mean, there obviously there's variances if you have a wife and children or a husband and children and you have a set lifestyle. It makes it a little bit different when it comes to making big decisions. But at the end of the day, I've always thought I want my girls to know that taking a chance is okay. Like you've got to be a risk taker or like you just live a mediocre existence forever. And that's okay. There's plenty of people that most people actually just want to live a regular life and that's it. Me personally, I think that most people don't take the leap because of fear of judgment of others, right? If there was nobody around to judge us for our failures, who cares, right? but we have people in our lives that are like, I told you not to do that. I told you nobody'd buy that. And you know, think about like when you wrote your first book, even the first Frogville book, how much um imposter syndrome was there? Like, I'm a lawyer. I've been a lawyer my whole life now and no kids, and I'm going to write a children's book. Are you serious? Like, it exists, right? It's real. And everybody
That's
goes through that.
yeah, I wasn't sure anyone would buy a single copy of the book,
Right.
and certainly not a copy of the second book.
Right.
But, it fortunately, they have.
Yeah.
It would be more fortunate if that was, like, financially great, but,
Right.
there's always those beer cans on the side of the road, so, metal prices are up. Um,
I was getting ready to ask, what kind of beaches are you going to that there are beer cans strewn about?
Hey, it's spring break,
Right.
there are beaches everywhere. Yeah.
Metal prices are up. That's hilarious. So Charlotte, what advice would you give anybody watching? First off, let me give advice first. Buy every single one of these books, every Frogville book. Go buy it right now. But most importantly, go get the Frogville 4 book today. Even if you only get the Kindle version, it's our goal to get Charlotte to #1 on Amazon with this book. So if you would help us with that and make your purchase of the Kindle book and go ahead and download it to your Kindle device, that would be great. But what advice would you give to anyone watching who's thinking about taking a big leap in life? Maybe they're thinking about um, Shelley says you can always bust tables in Montana during the summer months.
Yeah.
So that is so random. I feel like there's a story behind that.
Yeah. Shelley's a friend of mine. Yeah.
In Montana?
No, but she
Oh,
knows of what she speaks. Yeah.
okay. So, but what advice would you give somebody thinking about taking a leap into something completely new? Maybe it's being an author, maybe it's starting a restaurant, which you've invested in a rest. I mean, you've done everything. Like, so talk about that. What advice would you give somebody that wants to make a big change in life?
Well, the first thing I would suggest they do is what I did after I read that provision in the partners agreement. I spent the better part of a year staging things and getting things ready. I made sure that I was up to date on all the things I needed to be up to date on. I made sure that I completed projects and didn't leave people hanging. I made sure that if there were things I could transition to someone else, I did. And I made sure that I reached out to my network and my friends to sort of get things organized. So I think it's important to do planning and to make arrangements to get you where you want to be. I'm not big on doing anything precipitously. So people who know me will know that. And I apologize. I have this random hair that keeps trying to stab me.
It's been bugging me the entire time.
It's
I'm
dragging me.
kidding.
Just driving me.
I didn't even notice it. So
All right. Well, it was bugging me. But in terms of advice, you really do have to do some planning. You have to be realistic with yourself. I'm not sure I would have been in a position to retire 5 years earlier. I thought about it because I was really tired of traveling all the time, and I loved the travel, and I loved my clients, and there is nothing like the rush you feel when the judge says the jury has a verdict and you stand up and wait for it. But after a while, that rush just, 8 weeks in the hotel for that 30 seconds, not quite so much. But
yeah,
I was at a point where I could make that decision and I could make that change. But even at that point, I made sure I had things organized. I made sure that my finances were in as good a shape as they could be. I made sure that all of my uh, things were updated. Uh,
yeah.
every
Yeah.
contact that I needed. I downloaded all of my contacts because I needed to be able to keep up with people. Of course, I did
Yeah.
it wrong and corrupted the file, so I lost 30 years worth of contacts, but nonetheless, I had
Oh,
time to do it. Yeah,
no.
yeah, user error. So I would recommend that anybody who's making a life decision do some computer training if you're not completely good at it, because it'll save you a lot of heartache.
But you know what though? I it goes back to your point though. So that happened, but you're okay.
Yeah, it's
You
fine. Yeah.
survived it.
I know how to find those people.
Right.
It's just not
Right.
as simple as it was before.
Right. Well,
But
there's always beer cans on the beach.
that's right. Or waitressing in Montana. But the really important part for making a change is make up your mind that you wanna do it.
Yeah.
If you are 50-50 on it, then it's not gonna work because you're not gonna be comfortable and you're not gonna be ready. But if you're ready, uh do what you need to do to make that change. That includes, I met you 2 years ago roughly,
Yeah.
at a seminar on marketing and speaking because I
Yeah.
wanted to do speaking. I still want to do more speaking. And
Yeah.
I knew that while I know how to speak and tell stories, I don't know anything about the business of speaking.
Right.
So I've taken classes and I've done online training and I've done reading.
Yeah.
And you have to not just make the decision that you're going to make a change, but you have to commit to it and educate yourself on any of the nuances that are going to be different than what you're currently doing. Otherwise, you're just setting yourself up for failure. And then it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. Well, I knew I
Yep.
shouldn't have made that choice. Well, it might have turned out differently if you had approached it differently.
And taking Glenn said to me the other night, you use the words, he goes, and I love it, but you say you have to take massive action. And he said, I've heard you say that hundreds of times. And he said he loves that. But I think number one is what you said is the number one most important thing, and that is make the decision on what you want to do. You cannot be half pregnant.
Right,
Like you got to go all in. Like you have to say, this is what I'm doing, and I'm going all in. And if it doesn't work out, then you adjust your
right.
sails, and
Yeah. You
so
do something different. If it doesn't work out, you have to commit to yourself that if it doesn't work out, you'll do something different. But I also recommend that people give themselves a time frame.
yeah,
Because at least in the law, if it isn't on the calendar, it doesn't happen. So
right,
you need a deadline. You need to
yep,
work towards deadlines. When I
yep,
did the first book, um, I had just retired. I was talking to a buddy of mine from high school, Claude Collins, and you know Claude. Claude's a
mhm,
little bit older than I am, but we went to the same school. It's a little
yeah,
school, so everybody knows everybody. And he was asking me what I was going to do. And I said, well, I think I might want to write a book. And he said, well, if you don't start now, you'll never get finished. I know somebody who's teaching a class. It starts on Monday. You'll sign up. You'll have a book in 8 weeks. Okay. It
right,
took a little longer than 8 weeks, but he
yeah,
was right. If I knew I wanted to do something, but if I hadn't had a deadline and a schedule and a structure, I
yeah,
might never finish the first one. So you need to both make a decision on what you want to do, but set
yeah.
yourself some goals and time frames.
And I think that it's important to point out something else you said is that you sometimes have to just adjust. You
Mhm.
and I, for this book, we I think this we ended up landing on Frog Day, which is crazy cool. But we had other dates that we had decided on, right? Didn't we have like two different other dates that we were shooting
We
for? And
we
then
did.
because of just some things going on and the illustrations, and we won't even get into that, but all of the stuff, it's like, okay, well, let's just make a little adjustment on the calendar, and we're not changing the goal, we're just changing the date that we're going to achieve the goal. So
Right.
I think that this is all so important for people to know and learn.
You have to be ready to make changes, and sometimes it does. They're changes, and they may be inconvenient, but they're not crucial.
Right.
If they are just scheduling issues, well, they're scheduling issues.
Right.
Calendar things get moved. Uh,
Yeah.
I was a trial lawyer for more than 30 years. The number of continuances when you showed up on Monday and they were like, "Oh, the judge is still in trial from the one before."
Yeah.
Okay, well, I'll go home. We'll come back next week. You
Right.
learn to worry about those things that make a difference,
Yeah.
and that kind of stuff at the end of the day really doesn't make a difference. It may be annoying, it may require some adjusting, but
Yep.
it's not at the heart of things catastrophic.
Right.
The catastrophic things are the substantive ones, and that's different.
Yeah.
But you got to learn to not just pick your battles, but identify the things that are battles as opposed to just, you know, blocks in the road.
Amen. Charlotte, you are amazing. I want everybody watching, if you go to charlafrost.com, would somebody type in charlafrost.com, put the www in the comments, www.charlafrost.com. That will make it clickable for other people watching the stream if you put the www in there. And go over and go click on at the top, you'll see Frogville 4 in the menu. Click that, it'll take you over to the page, and you can go get the Kindle version and or get both versions. You can get the hardback version as well, which I got both of them this morning. So you
And I
guys need,
thank you for that. Yes.
yeah, everybody go over and grab a copy there. Jill put it in, thank you, Jill. So Charlotte, is there anything else you would like to share with the audience before we wrap this up?
Well, I hope that everyone picks up a copy of Lily and not only reads it, but reads it to their children.
Yeah,
Or if you don't have children, read it to the neighbor's children. Go down to the elementary school and read to the elementary kids. They're fun stories, and I think that people will enjoy them when they hear them. And they're pretty oral, which is interesting. I didn't realize it until I was reading them out loud. I come from a long line of storytellers, and apparently it's buried in the genes because when you read them out loud, they have a different feeling to them. But they're visual and they're fun.
that's so awesome. And yes, go read to the kids in your local elementary school.
Yeah.
Go read to them. It's very um first off, it's service to others. Second, it's incredibly fulfilling. Go help those kids. Go read
Absolutely.
to them.
Kids are so much fun. I still haven't figured out a way to work in a rocket launcher as requested by Grayson when I read to his class, but this is a shout out to Grayson. I'm still working on the rocket launcher. I did find a way to put a few more archery items in.
That's awesome. That's so awesome. Charlotte, you're amazing. Stay with me. I'm going to end the live stream. Please, everybody go to charlafrost.com. My wife just put it in the Facebook feed. charlafrost.com/Frogville hyphen 4. Like I said, you can just go to Sharla Frost and click on the thing at the top too. So go over and get a copy of the book today, and if you don't have the others, get the others as well, and start with the first book in the series, and have fun with this, and help your kids and other children enjoy these stories because they're amazing, as are you, Charlotte Frost. You're
Thank you,
amazing.
Ken. I appreciate that.
Thank you. Jill says congratulations, by the way. So
Thank you, Jill.
all right, we're going to end the live stream. Thank you to everyone who shared this out. And there is still time for redemption. If you want to go ahead and share this out now, that would be great. Stay with me. I'll be right back with you, Charlotte. Everybody have an awesome day and make sure you go to everywhere on social media and follow Sharla Frost everywhere. We'll see y'all later. Thank you, Charla.
Thank you, Ken.